Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, the show where we make it easy for you to connect with the people of Ponchatoula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and today I've got a terrific guest. This is a person that I've been looking forward to interviewing for quite some time. Many years ago, we had the pleasure of working together, and I've known her mother for, I guess, decades, and it has been my distinct honor and pleasure to watch her grow in the legal profession that we share, where she has been a shining star, a shooting star, a rising star for many years. And I cannot wait to introduce you to Ebony Morris. So with no further ado, Ebony, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's my honor, and I can't wait to dig into all the things you've done and that you're doing. But why don't we kick things off with you just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so first and foremost, I am not from Ponchatoula.
Don't worry, you are not the only guest. This show is Ponchatoula centric in that we're from here in where we film it, but we kind of aim to contact people from all around that are impacting our area. So for you, someone who grew up near Ponchatoula but not in Ponchatoula and has been distinguished as for example, Southeastern Alumnus of the Year, Young Alumnus of the Year, and for so many other reasons, and family service to our community, and one small bit, clerking at the Ponchatoula law firm entitles you to lifelong, Ponchatoula status. But thank you for clarifying that.
So I am from Amite, Louisiana, born and raised. Went to Amite High School, graduated in 2007. I went to Southeastern Louisiana University, graduated in 2011. Went straight to law school at Southern University Law Center, and I graduated in 2014. And since then, I've been a practicing attorney in New Orleans. Currently, I'm an associate attorney with Foley and Mansfield, which is a national civil defense firm that's based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, but they have an office in New Orleans, Louisiana. Now, I've been here for a whopping 1 month and a day, but before that, I was an attorney with Phelps Dunbar, and before that, an associate attorney at a few other firms as well.
So you have been in demand, and I know, having an older brother that worked at Phelps Dunbar once upon a time, how prestigious it is to get in those doors there. That's an old, big, prestigious, and very accomplished law firm. What would you say you've learned? You've been out of school, since 14, you said. And you've had a chance to see a bunch of places. What have you learned moving from firm to firm, kind of, up through the food chain, if you will, up to now a national firm that's based way out of state? What have been some lessons you've learned along the way?
So I think the most important lesson is it's okay to be different and stick out. A lot of these defense firms, a lot of the attorneys there, they are kind of cut from the same mold. Right. Most of those attorneys grew up in New Orleans, went to all the New Orleans high schools, and here I come, a fish out of water from Amite, Louisiana. That's not really familiar with Jesuit and Holy Cross and all these other high schools, but realizing and just tapping into it's okay to be different. We're meant to be different. We're meant to be unique. And no matter what everybody else has, what their background is, you have something unique to bring to the table. So that's probably the most important lesson that I have learned in each of these places that I've been in. Of course, I've definitely learned how to practice, what to do, what not to do. A lot of what not to do.
That's why we call our profession a practice, right? No matter how many years you've been at it, we're always practicing.
That's right. So it's been more so a lot of what not to do, not just with the practice, but just with management, with how you handle stress, how you handle others who may, get on your nerves one day, how you interact with opposing counsel. So just all around those type of lessons.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I couldn't agree more. One thing I often tell young lawyers that I mentor is just be yourself, which goes right in line with what you say about being different, because the thing about it, no matter how different you are, maybe from the quote norm, you are the perfect attorney for somebody as you are. There's somebody out there that needs your exact service. And so, we don't have to fall from some cookie cutter mold. God makes some people 6'5" with booming, commanding voices, and they look like the TV lawyers we may have grown up with. And that's great for them. That works for them. But you don't have to be that to be outstanding in a courtroom or anywhere else in life. So I love that you shared that message. We are going to dig deep into your legal career and talk about some of the things you've done, some of the accomplishments and awards you've won and such. But where I want to go right now is let's go back to Amite, Louisiana, right up the road from here, when you were a little girl. And if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about your childhood, because my guess is the values you learned, at Patricia Morris's knee in the tiny community of Amite in Tangipahoa, Louisiana, formed you into the big powerhouse lawyer you are now. So take us back to childhood and tell us about that.
Oh, man. So according to my mother, I was, I don't want to say bad.
but she might.
But I never got in trouble at school, right? For the most part. But I was always the child that had the comeback. That was very independent, didn't really want to listen, knew everything, been everywhere, as my mama would say. And I always got whoopings from my mama. I always got in trouble. And so dealing with being that type of child with a strong mother that I have, she was very strict. There were plenty of times where she would tell my friends and my neighbors, Ebony cannot come outside today because Ebony has to study. And she was just that way. And it drove me insane because, I wanted to be the normal kid. I wanted to go out and play. And I did those things, right? If I did my homework and I made good grades, but she was just always drilling in the importance of education. There's one thing that she would tell me all the time is if you get your education, that is something that nobody can take away from you. The only person that can take that away from you is God.
Right.
So she drilled that home for me. And now as an attorney, I'm really, really thankful that she did that because, making me study prepared me for law school. It prepared me for the practice because before you, and it, Parker, before you go to court, you have to study your pleadings. You have to study
absolutely. And
yes.
you can't pass that bar exam without being stuck inside all day studying for a certain period of time. So your mom prepared you well for this bookish profession that we're in. I remember my first year of law school, I went to the eye doctor the summer before, and I had 20/20 vision, and I couldn't even make it to the winter break before needing glasses. There was so much reading and studying involved. So it sounds like your basic introduction to academics from your mom prepared you for that life. And you just had maybe an earlier start than the rest of us. We can see from the background of your screen that you're in some type of what I'd call a skyscraper. Ponchatoula, like Amite, we don't have any tall buildings in town, right? Growing up, I think there was one elevator in town in the old family Strawberry Mogul mansion, and that building's been torn down. So, you come from these little low building community to where you are. What are some lessons you learned in childhood in Amite, in Tangipahoa, that serve you well now that you're living in a big city for a big national company?
How to be genuine. That is something that I pride myself in being. I think that when you come from a small town, I don't know anybody in Amite, Louisiana, or in Tangipahoa Parish who just was not genuinely good people. And that is difficult to find in, I don't want to say, New Orleans, but just bigger cities. A lot of people are not very genuine. They're not very nice, but you do stick out if you are genuinely a good person.
Yeah.
And that is definitely one lesson that I learned. And also, I think I shock a lot of people, or I have shocked a lot of opposing counsel who discovered that, just because I'm from a small town, it doesn't mean that I'm not intelligent.
Right. Sometimes people will mistake a slow country accent, and you don't have one as much as me, for example, for a slow mind. And it's a quick way to get burned in court or elsewhere.
Yeah, no. A lot of us from smaller towns are very, very intelligent and wise and clever people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that has served me very, very well. Like the things that I've learned in AMET and the lessons that I've learned, not just from my mom, but from my teachers at AMET High School and at Southeastern, it has served me very, very well in a bigger city.
Well, you mentioned genuineness and good people, and I can't think of a better way to describe your mother. So before we move on from the childhood chapter of your life, let's shine a light on her, because so many of us know Patricia Morris as the community leader, an NAACP president, somebody who's out there as a mover and shaker. You know her as your mama. You know her as the woman who helped you become who you are. So, tell us about her as a person, if you don't mind, so we can kind of take a moment to shine a light on her, because she certainly deserves it.
Yeah. So I will say she is bullheaded. Okay. Unfortunately, I don't know if she's watching or not, but I know she wasn't feeling well. And I've been begging her to go to the doctor. And she's just like, nah, I'm fine. But it's just a testament to how tough she was growing up. And just how resilient. That's probably the best word that I can use to describe my mom. She was a single parent, raised 3 girls who all thought they knew, everything about the world, right?
Where are you in that pecking order? First, second, or third?
I'm nice. Yes, the best, the favorite. But no,
while we were chatting, my baby brother tried to call me, and I had to put it on. But I can tell you, in our family too, that's a trend. The babies think they're the best every time.
Oh, they are. I mean, 110%. Like it's proven. But the best for last. That's all I can say. The best is for last. But anyway, but she was just very resilient, and there were a lot of times where, we couldn't have the nicer things, or I couldn't have those Jordans or shoes that are similar to someone else, but she made it work with what she had. And the proudest thing that she has done, I think, amongst the many things, but the thing that stuck with me is her going back to school to get her bachelor's degree at 50. Like I remember seeing my mom studying, like the same, requirement that she had for me to study.
Yeah.
She also studied as well. And she would stay up until 10, 11 o'clock at night. But she graduated at 50 and graduated with honors. And so I just think that's just a testament to how resilient and how strong she is. And I just pray that one day I can be half the woman that she is.
I'm so glad you shared that, because my family experienced a similar story. My mom went back to school to get her bachelor's degree in her 40s. And I distinctly remember, I don't know what grade I was in, but it was probably 6th, 7th, 8th, something like that. But I remember being at that same table as my mama, doing homework as she was doing homework, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes with tears in her eyes. She'd be the first to admit that the reintroduction to calculus at 40-something, after all those decades since she last took a math class, was hard. And thank God for great people in our community, like Miss Barbara Allen, who helped teach her that. But for us kids, that example, it can't be coincidental that all of her children went on to get a master's degree or more. 3 lawyers plus a master's degree, because we saw her digging in at a hard time in life, and she still had dinner to cook and all the other duties of a mama. But clearly made an impact with you and the star student you became, and I think that's important for people. So if there are mamas watching, thinking about doing that, or dads or whoever, it makes an impact on your kids. And you and I are both examples of that.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about, you mentioned Amy growing up, learning from your mom, the community folks that shared values with you. Your next chapter is Southeastern. And I
Yeah.
know that you shine there. As I alluded to earlier, just last year, you and Judge Carl Barbier of the Federal District Bench in New Orleans were honored as the Alumni of the Year. You as the young version of that. So clearly Southeastern played a big part in your life.
Yeah.
They're obviously very proud of you. The successor to you in that award is my friend Jason, who's the CEO of Barrier Construction. So this is a big, prestigious award. They have a lot of people to choose from. Last year, it was you. So let's talk about, one, your experience at Southeastern, and two, the importance of that university to you in your life.
Yeah. So interesting enough, and I hope they don't take my award back when I say this. But Southeastern was actually the last on my list.
Really? Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
And it was my mom who convinced me to go. She said, look, you are not going to New Orleans. You're not going to Baton Rouge. You're going up the street so I can watch you. But once I got over that, I met some great people at Southeastern. Dr. Eric Summers, he's now, I think, the vice president of student affairs. But when I met him, he worked in the Office of Student Conduct when I was a student worker. And I affectionately call him my big brother, and I call his wife, Sandy Summers, my big sister. Dr. Miles Love, Miss Antoinette Alag, all these people were instrumental in my experience at Southeastern. Professor Rebecca Hensley, she unfortunately passed away a few years ago. Dr. Petrakis, Dr. Traylor, all these people helped make my experience at Southeastern worthwhile. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Southeastern is affordable. But aside from that, I think just the lessons that I learned from them, like Dr. Petrakis and Dr. Traylor, for instance, they're in the political science department. The analysis and the analytical skills that they taught me and other students really, really prepared me for law school.
Well, I'm glad I'm sorry, Ebony, please continue. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead. No, I was just saying that it prepared me for law school. Professor Hensley, she actually wrote my recommendation when I one of my recommendations when I pledged Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. There was another huge part of my experience meeting 13 other beautiful women. It's 14 of us total. But meeting those women and building lifelong bonds with them, my experience at Southeastern is just once in a lifetime type of deal.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear you focus on a couple key points that I think are real strengths in Southeastern. And one, first and foremost, they clearly prepared you for the next level, for law school, because our paths kind of crossed at that point in your life, I think. And you were a standout student. You were near the top of your class, and you were, just doing so well in so many levels. And that wouldn't be possible without the proper collegiate preparation at Southeastern. And two, the affordability angle, because the reality is, especially in a community like Tangipahoa, there are not a lot of wealthy folks here, right? So someone like you may have Tulane or Harvard brains, but heck, if we're not born with that silver spoon in our mouth, it's important we find a place where we can go, and afford to do it. Because right now we hear about it all the time in the news. There's a student loan crisis. There's all these problems. And, what people don't think about is if you blow all your money on undergrad, then you can't afford law school, right?
Exactly.
And if you're going to be an attorney, that's the more important one. If you're going to be a doctor, if I needed surgery, I'd be asking, where'd you go to med school, and where'd you do your residency, right? I wouldn't be as concerned with undergrad. So Southeastern is a really real resource here. I've seen my mother, my brother, my wife, and so many other important people in my life graduate from there. some like you went on to things like graduate school, and you mentioned Mama wouldn't let you go to Baton Rouge. Eventually, you got there in the form of law school, right? If you had to wait 4 years so she could make sure you can handle yourself. But
Right.
Thank you for sharing that. And since you mentioned your beautiful mom, I'm glad to see Miss Patricia, Miss Pat, that you're watching this show. And thank you for chiming in with a comment. I hope you're feeling better. I'm glad to see the shoe is now on the other foot, where Ebony is now telling you what you need to do after all those
That's
years
right.
of you telling her. Please listen to her. We both know she's really smart. And if anybody else is watching live, I want you to know that, like Miss Patricia, you have the ability to comment here. So, for example, if you have a question, if you want to ask Ebony how she got from A to B, or just any advice, or just say, hey, we love you, way to go, feel free to chime in. But Miss Pat, thank you very much for this comment and for sharing your beautiful daughter with the rest of us. And in particular, thank you for introducing her to me, because for a brief moment in time, I had the benefit of her brilliance when she worked here at our firm for a little bit. So we've been talking Southeastern, the impact on you. Your next move is to law school. So tell us, if you will, about law school, heading to Baton Rouge, and kind of how that was different from undergrad and what you learned there and how it helps you now.
Well, law school, I would not go back.
That makes two of us.
I would not go back. So law school was, it was very, very different, because they're teaching you how to think like a lawyer.
Right.
And I made the decision to go to Southern, not just for the affordability, right? But most of the attorneys that I knew at the time, they graduated from Southern. The ones that I respected. No shade, Parker. I know
that's okay.
I respect you too.
You said most, not all. If you said most, all, it would have been hurt.
No. Most. But no, seriously. They went to Southern. And so I made the conscious decision to go to Southern, because I actually got into LSU and Loyola. So I chose Southern by choice. And so I got there and immediately realized that I'm no longer in Kansas. It's very tough.
Right.
There were many, many nights where I cried on the phone with my mom at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, like, Mom, I'm gonna fail. But I made it through, thankfully. I met some great people. I think Southern, the unique thing about Southern is that because it's so small, it kind of turns into a family. And so there are some professors that, I have them on speed dial today, and I've been practicing for 9 years. Most students can't say that, they can't say that I can pick up the phone and call.
I couldn't say that.
Yeah, no, I can pick up the phone now and call Vice Chancellor Russell Jones, so.
Yeah. I only have LSU law professors on speed dial now because I'm on the faculty with them.
Yeah.
But if I wasn't teaching with them, because when I go back, even as a teacher after 20 plus years, those nerves hit you. And it was a big class. There were, hundreds and hundreds of students in each class. And so, I can imagine that sense of family helped you get through tough times.
Yes, it definitely did. And, my best friends to this day, they were other students at Southern. We studied together for the bar exam. We passed the bar exam together. Me and another one, we're waving into Texas to get our Texas bar license together.
That's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. So I met really, really great people at Southern. And I am a proud Southern University Law Center alum.
Well, that's neat. And I can speak to the quality of your law school in that not only have I practiced with and against Southern lawyers for 20 plus years, but my right-hand woman here at this firm, Megan Notriana Liddell, is herself a Southern Law School graduate. And so she worked for me before, during, and after her law school there. And I got to see how well they trained her. And it's really benefited my firm. Your mom asked an excellent question here that I'll post, and I'll read for anybody who's listening but not able to look at it. And it's to say, what would you recommend to at-risk students who have now received a clairvoyant vision of becoming an attorney? So, Ebony, as the guest of honor, you get to go first. I guess this is a question either one of us can answer, but it's an excellent one. How would you respond to your mom's question?
Well, number one, make sure that that's what you want to do.
Right. Absolutely.
Not me, but there are plenty of other attorneys who get into the profession and discover, you know what, this is actually not what I want to do. So make sure it's what you want to do. Also, stay focused along the path. There will be people who try to convince you not to become an attorney. They may stray you away from that or try to stray you away from that, but just remember the end goal. You want to be a lawyer. The other thing is stay out of trouble. Okay. So when you apply to become an attorney, you got to take the bar exam, but a part of that is character and fitness. Okay. And so if you have an extensive record, you have to disclose that information. All right. So it's best to just stay out of trouble.
Well, all those whoopings your mama gave you paid off. She kept you straight, and you were able to make the cut.
Yes, yeah. Stick with Pat Morris. She'll keep you on the straight path.
Well, and I would add very little to that because you hit on the key points. I would say, and to your first point about making sure, I would just add, as early as you're having a thought of this as a maybe, as a possibility, try to go work in the legal field. Because I think one thing people don't realize, because I think a lot of times kids get trapped. You're a smart kid. I have a niece who was student of the year at St. Thomas last year. She's brilliant. She's a freshman at LSU. And of course, when you make a 30 on your ACT or big grades or whatever, people say, what do you want to do? And they kind of quickly seem to try to narrow it down to just a few things. It's like doctor, lawyer, engineer. There are thousands or more career opportunities out there. And to me, what I wanted to do when I left PHS totally changed. And even when I went into the law, I went to law school thinking I'd be a prosecutor. That's not what I do now. To me, the experience of seeing firsthand what the job is like, if you want to be a prosecutor, go, even if you have to volunteer, but go get some access to the criminal court, even if you're just watching from the cheap seats. But go see it in action, because it may only take a few days for you to realize, I don't want to do this because of that, something you never knew about. But it's not until you kind of get in the trenches and see how the sausage is made, so to speak, that you can figure out that's something you do. Because the worst thing in the world is something you alluded to, Ebony, thinking later you don't want to do it. We both know classmates that wish they had never made that decision. Once you're straddled with, in this day and age, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, it's kind of too late almost, right? So, you've given really good. Miss Pat, thank you for that question. It's an excellent one. And Ebony, thank you for taking the lead on the answer. Your mom also says she's very proud of you, and she should be. And thank you, Miss Pat.
Thank you, Mom.
Well, folks, we're here with Ebony Morris. And as she mentioned at the top of the interview, she's not from Ponchatoula, but she grew up very near here. And she's kind of passed through here, at least briefly in her career, as she moves south from Amy to New Orleans, where she now practices with a national law firm. And we've been asking her about her childhood, her college, and her law school experience. Well, now I want to get into the meat and potatoes, Ebony, and talk about the practice of law, because it has now been, believe it or not, about a decade since you worked in this little, office that I'm standing in right now. And you have gone on, thankfully, to bigger and better things. And I'm still in, first floor Ponchatoula, and you're in there at that skyscraper with the background. And I know you've done all these cool things. So if you don't mind, take us through your career a bit. What I'm looking for here principally is kind of what you do, what you enjoy about what you do. I mean, share as much or little as you like, but I think it's helpful to the folks, especially the young viewers of our show, to get a feel for what a career in law is like, because you have proven you can start in a small little town with humble beginnings and make it really high up. And so I just want to share with people that journey as you tell your story. And so tell us about your career, if you don't mind.
Sure. So I'll back up a little bit with law school. So
Yeah, oh, please. I didn't mean to go too fast.
In my third year of law school, most folks, they had jobs lined up already. And I did not. And you can imagine, or if you can imagine, the level of anxiety that I had, like, oh my God, I'm going to take it the bar exam. I have no job lined up. But maybe like 3 or 4 months before I started studying for the bar exam, I had an interview for a national defense firm. The name of it at the time was Foreman Perry Watkins Cruz Party. And primarily what they practice is toxic tort defense work. And so for those who don't know what that means, it means that they defend these Fortune 500 corporations in cases where there's alleged exposure to like benzene or asbestos or what have you. And so me just wanting a job, I took the interview. And I did well. They liked me enough. And I accepted a position there at the last minute when I was studying for the bar. And so I started there, stayed there for maybe a year and a month. And then one of the partners that I primarily worked with split from the firm and joined up with another. So, of course, I don't have any other connections at that firm. So I went with that partner. And unfortunately, that experience did not work out. But I learned some valuable lessons. I think that part of my career is where I learned what not to do.
Which is super important. And thank you for sharing that, because it seems to me so many folks that are accomplished as you are, they love to gloss over kind of the low points. We all have peaks and valleys in our career, right? And to me, the lessons are learned in the valleys. But, for example, when I'm at the Bar Association, I only hear lawyers talk about their wins. There's a lot of chest pounding and bragging about big verdicts or big wins. And it's like, last time I checked, when something goes to trial, there's a winner and a loser, but the lessons learned in the loss. So thank you for sharing that as you go on with your story. I appreciate your candor because it's super important.
Oh, no problem at all. So, that situation did not work out. Went to a smaller firm where I will say I really learned how to practice law there. And so I stayed there for 5 years, learned everything that I needed to learn. And then Phelps Dunbar came to me and said, hey, we're looking for someone with your experience. You want to give it a shot? Sure. Why not? So went there. And now this place that I'm with now, Foley and Mansfield, is kind of the same situation. We've been watching you. We like your experience. Can you come here? And so I've been here, but primarily what I do is civil defense work. And so my practice areas encompass a lot of different areas. So toxic tort, workers' compensation, commercial litigation, so like breach of contract, some personal injury stuff, pretty much anything you throw out there. I've done it at some point in my career, with the exception of the plaintiff stuff. And I think Parker would like this. I actually had a plaintiff case.
Oh, really?
I had a plaintiff case. I did.
I'm proud of you.
At one of my prior firms. It was a first party property damage. So I or my client sued one of the homeowners insurance companies and got a pretty hefty settlement.
That way to go. We're proud, hey, as an alumnus of our little firm, we're proud of you to go take that win. But I guess you saw enough of that when you were here to realize I don't want to do what they do. And I don't blame you. And look, I want to mention too, you're humble, so you're not going to bring this up yourself, but you have kind of stacked up awards and recognition along the way, whether it's recognition from super lawyers to Bar Association to Lawyers of Color, Hot List. I think you were Lawyer of the Week. I can't keep track of all the awards you seem to be getting, but I'm very proud every time I see it come across the screen. because you deserve them all and more, Ebony. I know
you.
you were president of the Martinet Society. If you don't mind, I think it would be cool for you to tell us what that is and its role in the community. It's an important one.
Sure. So the Louis A. Martinet Legal Society is one of the largest minority bar associations in Louisiana. And Louis A. Martinet, he was an attorney in like the 1920s. And so these attorneys of color, they got together to create this um, organization. It was just a small group at the time, but the point was to protect minority civil rights at the time. And so throughout the years, I think it's a 66-year-old organization, at least the greater New Orleans area is. Throughout the years, the Louis A. Martinet Legal Society has been a voice for attorneys of color in the greater New Orleans area. And so I was the president from 2021 to 2022. But before that, I started as a social committee co-chair. Then I went to the vice president of membership, which is on the executive board. Then I went to president-elect. And then from there, I went to becoming the president. And it's probably one of the proudest moments in my legal career because as the president, you're the face, you're the voice. And so just a few things that I was able to accomplish under my leadership. We created this judicial diversity internship project, which was a project to allow minority law students an opportunity to intern with state and federal judges. Mm-hmm. A lot of minority students, unfortunately, don't have that opportunity. So, as the voice, we were able to step in and provide that. So we created connections with state and federal judges within New Orleans and some in Baton Rouge and some, other areas. But I'm really proud to say that over 20% of the students who participated in that project actually got jobs from that. They got employment from that. And as a result of that project, the Louisiana State Bar Association recognized the Martinet Society as the Guardian of Diversity award recipient for 2022. So really good for that.
To give you to give our viewers a feel for how important that is, a legal judicial clerkship or any opportunity to work in the court system is invaluable because it gives you an opportunity to see all the players, the plaintiff lawyer, the defense lawyer, the judge, and everybody else involved. And, it gives you a spot to kind of watch and learn. You can do important research and legwork for the judges, but really you get a lot more than you give in employment. It's not something you have to do forever, although there are lawyers that make a career of it, some very good ones. But I got to tell you, in the 21 years of my practice, the best year I ever spent was the year I spent clerking for a federal judge down there where you were talking about, Ebony. And and it's super important. It's not as diverse as it should be. It's getting more diverse all the time. I had lunch today with a dear friend of mine who sits on that bench, who's bringing more diversity to that bench himself, and I'm sure will through his hiring practices. But it's a very noble, aim you have there, and an important one, in helping lawyers. So I thank you for doing that. That's really cool. And while we're on the topic of lawyers of color, I know you have too many lawyers to list, but I know I forgot to mention that you were in the National Black Lawyers Top 40 Under 40. Did I get that right?
Yes.
That's pretty. We see 40 of 40 lists, and it's like, hey, it's an honor if you're listed 40 of 40 in Hammond, but to be at the national level on a 40 of 40 list like that, I thought that was really impressive. So
thank you.
So we're talking career here. What are some lessons you've learned, some mentors you've had, kind of what lessons have you learned in these years of practice, and kind of where did they come from?
So I'll tell you, there was a point within that 1 to 2 year range where I actually doubted whether or not I made the right decision. And I doubted that because every room that I went into, even in New Orleans, went to court, went to a deposition, just anywhere, I was probably the only African American attorney on either side. I was the only woman. And unfortunately, there are some attorneys who are not very nice.
You're right about that. Yeah.
Not very nice, especially when they are on opposite sides of younger, diverse lawyers. There were times where I went to court in rural areas and I would be asked to prove that I am actually an attorney.
Come on.
Like I would have to pull out my bar card, right? Because my business.
And I bet they're not asking everybody else with gray beards and bald heads like me whether they need a bar card. That's a shame.
No, not at all. Not at all. And so at that time, I developed a case of imposter syndrome. And for those who don't know what that means, it basically means that you doubt yourself and you think that you were a fraud, right? Like you think that you were being something that you were really not. And thankfully, I was able to connect with a lot of mentors who told me, no, you belong at this table. You belong in this profession. You wanted to be in this profession since you were in 10th grade when you say you wanted to be like Johnny Cochran. You belong here. Mm-hmm. And those mentors were other attorneys who've been practicing for, longer than I have, other judges. One judge in particular, the Honorable Karen Wells Roby, she is a federal magistrate judge in the Eastern District of Louisiana.
I had the pleasure of working with her a little bit when I was a clerk in her court for Judge Duvall. Yeah, great magistrate judge. Yeah.
Yes, I have her on speed dial. But no, she is a fantastic. She's been a fantastic mentor.
What a great mentor to have. Yeah.
Yeah, not just for the legal profession, but also for, just spiritually. She's a vegan, so I'm not vegan, but I get some tips from her. If I want to do a fast from meat or if I want a juice or something, I call Judge Rose. She has been an all-around fantastic mentor for me. And she's probably one of the main reasons why I have remained in this profession for 9 years and going, because she also told me, you belong here. It's what you make of it. And if anything, you don't allow opposing counsel to get under your skin. You don't allow anybody to get under your skin. If anything, that should be motivation to show, no, I belong here. Yeah. And always put your best foot forward. So I definitely learned a lot of lessons from her and my other mentors. And I'm happy that I'm in a position to be mentors for others because, they did it for me. So I have to do it for others.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that because you're striking right at the core of a very real issue in our profession. And there's really no better word for it than bully. I know when I was a young lawyer 20 years ago, heck, I was bullied sometimes by my dad's friends. The guys that were nice to my daddy, who was the sheriff, would bully me on a case because as a young attorney, as you're finding your footing, sometimes it's a lot like being a freshman football player thrown out there with the varsity, right? I mean, you may have the stuff and the talent and you belong there, but it's going to take a little while. But it's so much worse if you're a woman. I cannot imagine how much worse that is if you're a Black woman. But just having my own right-hand woman in Megan Notranda Liddell and seeing some of the crap she has to put up with that I never had to put up with lets me know that her journey is a lot harder than mine. And yours is, so it's so important to find those anchor points, those mentors, people you can rely on, because sometimes you just need to hear it from somebody you respect, like a judge, Judge Roby type, to say, you belong, you earned this, you got this. Because imposter syndrome is real and it hits you at points in your career when you might not expect it. We may be here in 10 more years when you move from 40 under 40 to top 10 and you're like, wait, no, I'm not there yet, but you need to where you are. So I want to thank you. I've taken more of your valuable time than I probably expected, and you've been very generous with it. And for that, I thank you. If you don't mind, I'd like to ask you just a few questions as we depart, about your career, about advice you would give to young folks who want to get into your career, and then, anything else you want. But for now, why don't you tell our viewers what a day in the life is like for a lawyer? And I know no 2 days are the same, but your practice is very different from mine. I mean, I represent the people on the street in Ponchatoula, and it's very different than interacting with these big multinational companies like you do. But for folks that might want to get from where they are to where you are, would you mind telling them a little bit about what that's like while we have the opportunity to sit down with you?
Yeah, so I will start by saying that it is not what you think. There are a lot of days where I spend that I spend at my computer, cranking out motions, cranking out reports, making recommendations to my client. And there are other days where I am preparing for a deposition the next day, or I am, preparing for court the next day. I'm in court all day. So it just varies. But I think a lot of people have this this idea that attorneys are in court all the time. Well, not all of us, right?
Right.
It doesn't mean that I don't go to court. I do.
Sure.
Doesn't mean
It
that I
means
don't.
it's a good thing you have an office with a view, right? Because you're in that office a lot more than the courtroom.
Yeah, I have a wonderful view, but no, a lot of it is spent actually writing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of younger folks who want to be attorneys, they're surprised when I tell them that, because they just think, oh, I'm going to be, just trying cases and going and arguing motions every day. Well, no, you got to write first before you get there. So you got to refine that skill first before anybody trusts you to go to court. Now, my day in particular, every day starts off with prayer, and then my Orange Theory fitness class for an hour. And then after that, I start working. And then, and this place is very flexible. So 3 days out of the week, I can work from home, and 2 days I'm in the office. So like tomorrow, I just work from home, which is great. But it varies. It depends on what we got. Like right now we have 2 cases set for trial, one in Louisiana and one in Texas, the early part of next year. So it's grind mode right now. But next summer it could be just really chill and really relaxed.
Yeah.
It just depends.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So if somebody who, has stayed this long with us in this interview, which means probably clearly they like what they're hearing, they're enjoying learning about you and your story, and quite possibly they want to follow in your footsteps, what advice would you give, to those students? And you've given a lot of great advice along the way, but if someone were to walk in your office today and say, hey, I'm a sophomore at Southeastern, Tulane, LSU, Southern, wherever, what advice would you give that kid?
So a couple of things. Number one, going back to what I said earlier in response to my mom's question, stay focused.
Right.
It is cliche. It sounds cliche, but seriously, stay focused. I remember a point when I was at Southeastern, one of my professors, who will remain nameless, actually tried to convince me to go into sociology, right? To spend some time doing that versus going to law school. And I remember telling my mom that, and she said, oh, absolutely not. You are going straight.
He's trying to discourage you and change career course? Like you showed no interest in it?
Yeah, and it was more so because I was doing well in the sociology class.
Gotcha.
And so that meant, I guess, to her that, oh, this is a better fit for you. Well, no, that's not what I want to do. So there will be people along the way who will try to convince you to do other things. But if your heart is set on it, and if that's what you want to do, then do it. And block out those distractions. The other thing, once you get into the profession, again, going back to what Parker said earlier, be authentic, be yourself. one thing that I'm coming into, or I have come into, is embracing my country twang. You know, without
I love
open
it.
my mouth in court, they know
Right.
I am not from New Orleans, and it's okay,
Yeah.
right? That makes me different. Embrace who you are. Don't try to be, as much as I want to be like Johnny Cochran, I will never have his style. I'll never have his swag. I won't even think like him, you know, but I'll have the skill set, but I am not him. Embrace that. Embrace that you are who you're supposed to be, which is unique. And that will
Right.
make you a better lawyer, and that will, garner respect, not just from the courts and from your colleagues, but also your clients. Clients do not want anybody representing them who are not authentic. So be yourself.
It'll make you a happier lawyer too, right? Because then
Oh, yeah,
you get comfortable in your skin and realize this is enough. I don't need
right.
to be something different, something more.
Exactly. 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 But
Well,
tap
give me
into
great
that power.
advice. Keep it going.
No, I was just saying, tap into that power of being yourself and being authentic. A
Love
friend
it.
of mine that I work with her now, her name is Shelly. She calls herself Shell Woods, like Elle Woods. That's her unique, and
Right.
it's spot on, right? But that's her unique, authentic self, and she has tapped into that, right? And because
That's
of
really
that, she's become a better lawyer because that's who she is, right?
right.
So definitely be yourself.
Well, you have shared so much wisdom with us, and I thank you. As we depart here, is there anything else on your mind, on your heart, anything at all you'd like to share with our viewers and listeners?
Well, first, I just want to thank you so much, Parker, for inviting me. This has been so fun and so great. I think you are a phenomenal, very smart attorney. Megan is a great attorney.
Thank
And look, you can hang
you.
in Ponchatoula, New Orleans. You can hang with the best of them. So,
Thank you for
so
saying
first
that. It
and
means a lot.
foremost, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate the opportunity. The other thing that I would be remiss if I did not say it. I am so thankful to God
Amen.
for his guidance, for his protection, for his wisdom that he gives me every day. To those of you who are believers, even if you are not a believer, I know Park is a believer, so I can
Oh,
say
yeah.
that. But even if you are not, hold on to God's unchanging hand, like the old song. He will
Mhm.
never steer you wrong. He will never leave you. He will always be there for you. So I'll add that to the
I'm glad
addition.
you did. Well said. Yeah.
Hold on to God's unchanging hand because he will not leave you. He will guide you and protect you.
Let me mirror, excuse me, let me mirror the thanks because while I don't know your exact hourly rate, I have a feel for it and it's high, folks. Ebony's not just her wisdom, which she shared in abundance, but her time is very valuable. And she shared a full billable hour with us here, just about between pre-show and the interview. So we thank you for that. We will close with our own clerk of court. Nobody knows lawyers better than the clerk of court. But Gary,
Hi.
it was a great interview. Gary, thank you for tuning in till the end with us. Yeah, and your interview was one of my favorites here on the show, and it's a real honor to see you coming back to watch our friend Ebony, share her story. And to our viewers, I say thank you. Ponchatoula Live has come to an end today, but we will be back next week. So once again, I'll close by thanking Ebony Morris, my dear friend. And one announcement. I meant to mention this, but I forgot. Ebony has now added one more distinction to her career. She is now
Oh,
the adjunct faculty at LSU Law School, where she will teach a class with me at the beginning of next year. And I'm really excited about that. And I want to thank you for agreeing to do that, Ebony. It's going to be a lot of fun, and those kids are going to be so blessed to learn from you. So everybody, y'all have a great week. Thanks for tuning in. Take care.
thank you.